Hello guys, and welcome to another session of Excel for Work, our virtual training program to help you work smart and be productive at the office. In this session, we'll be looking at something very important in your Excel data analytics journey. That is how you can analyze data with PivotTable. So if you're excited as I am, join me as we go through this tutorial together. So first, we'll start off by going to the data sheets. So let's all switch to the data sheets over here. Let me minimize this a bit to give a full view of our data sets. So in this sheet, I have a data set spanning about 1,000 rows, right? And this data is an HR data. So what you have here is staff ID, full name, job title, department, business unit, gender, ethnicity, age, hire date, annual salary, bonus percentage, country, city, and the exit date. Now this data set, okay, is something we're going to be working throughout this session and the subsequent session. Now, if you are tasked as someone who is very conversant with Excel to determine how many females and how many males, or basically what is the gender distribution in this data set, from all the things we've learned so far, the function you can use to calculate that will be COUNTIF, right? So we are going to count the number of males and females in your data set. So first you have to pull out the gender. So I'm going to expand or zoom in. So first I'm going to do a unique. Unique is a function available to 365 in the current versions of Excel. So unique. Let's go up. So we have female, we have male, and then I'm going to do COUNTIFs. So COUNTIFs, right? Good. Now, from what we learned so far, it's actually advisable to do these calculations with tables. Okay, so you can just call it a table, but I'm just going to go ahead and select a range. So this is my range, and I'll bring a comma, and then this is my criteria. Because this is a dynamic array, I'm going to use a dynamic array reference hash to select both. Press enter, and then it gives me the answer of 518 females and then 482 male. It's a very simple question you can answer from this data set. But then if the question is made much more complex, like from this table, you are being required to determine what the gender distribution is for each ethnicity in each city. So if I take Chicago, I want to know the various ethnicities in that city, that's Chicago, and I want to know the gender distribution of each ethnicity. So if I take Black in Chicago, I want to know the male and female. If I take Caucasian in Chicago, I want to know the male and female. I want to take Asian in Chicago, I want to know the male and female. Now a question like that, still you can answer with COUNTIFs, but then it's going to be much easier to use a dedicated tool in Excel for what we call summarizing large data sets. Okay, so we are going to summarize this data to get the report you're looking for, right? And the tool to do that is what we call PivotTables. PivotTables, right? So PivotTables are Excel's data analytic tool. Okay, helps you summarize data into simple reports. Right? Now, how are we going to get access to this? First, according to best practice, before you use a pivot table, it's advised you ensure that the data is in a table. Okay, so currently, is this a table or not? No, it's not a table. This is because when you look up here, right, in the command tab, there is no table design tab, right? This is only a table if you have a table design tab at the top. So first thing we're going to do is convert this to table. So we come to insert, and then we're going to insert a table on this, right? And I'm going to click OK. So now this is a table. The next thing we're going to do is in the table design, we're going to name this staff. So naming the table staff. So we type staff over here, we press enter, meaning anywhere in this data set, this table can be referred to as what? As staff. Good. Once we have our data in a table, we can proceed to create a pivot table out of it. The reason why we like to create pivot tables out of tables is because tables expand as new data comes in, right? And then that way, once new data comes into our table, which is the source for our pivot table, all we need to do is refresh and our pivot table will pick up the new data. If you use a range, the pivot table is restricted to the range dimension. If new data comes in, the pivot table is not going to pick up the new data that has been uploaded, even though you refresh. All right, now let's go on and see how we can create a pivot table. So once we've created the table, we go back to insert. This time around, we're going to pivot table from table or range. From table or range. Now this is what's going to happen. It's first going to ask you that where are you selecting your data from, or where's your data coming from? Okay, so my data is coming from staff, which is a table I just named. Okay, now where do you want to drop this pivot table report you are creating? Is it going to be in a new worksheet or in the existing worksheet? Right? If you select new worksheet, you don't need to provide the location of where you want the pivot table report to be. When you select existing, you need to specify between the existing sheet you have, so that's stats and data, where exactly you want the pivot table report to be. Right? So we're going to use new worksheet. The last option is what? Add this data to what? The data model. Now, what is the data model? The data model is a connection of multiple tables that are related to each other, right? So in Excel, it's possible to analyze multiple data sets, right, that are related, okay? In this particular instance or this particular session, we will not be looking at data model, but in the subsequent session, we'll look at what a data model is, how to create one, and how it makes it easy for you to analyze multiple tables at the same time. All right, so with that said, let's move on to create our pivot table report. I'm going to click OK here, and then this is the pivot table reports area. Okay, so over here is where we're going to be creating our pivot table reports, right? And over here is what we call the field list. Okay, the field list. So first and foremost, let me walk you through what the field list is all about, and then we'll start off by creating some pivot table reports. Right. Now, you probably do not have your field list looking like mine. Okay, don't panic. The reason that is the case is because of the option you have selected over here. Now, this is the default option where you have your list up here and then the 4 areas over here. Now, you can easily tell why I don't use this option. That's because it's very difficult for you to have a quick view of all the fields you have available in your pivot table report. So I prefer the second option, where you have all your fields on the left and then you have the areas on the right. Good. Now, in case you are wondering what I'm referring to as fields, the fields are the names or the column headers you had in your table. Okay, so if you pay close attention, you realize that staff ID, full name, job title, department are the very same headers you have over here. So staff ID, full name, job title, department over here. So these fields, okay, basically the headers are what you have over here. These are what you're going to use in creating your pivot table reports. Okay, now sometimes your fields might be a lot. Okay, so it might be difficult for you to glance through and know where each field might be. So in the very same place, when you come here, you can sort your fields from A to Z, so that's easy for you to locate the field. So now, in creating a pivot table, you need these 4 areas to be able to create a pivot table report. Okay, so you need values, you need columns, you need rows, and filters. I'm going to explain what each of them stand for. Now, this field list is always activated once you are standing in the pivot table report. So once I'm anywhere here in this demarcation over here, this pivot table field list will be available. Once I step out of it, it disappears. When I step in, it pops up. When I step out, it goes away. When I step in, it pops up. However, I can choose to close it. Once I click the X and close it, even though I step in or out, it doesn't pop up. Okay, and then several times I've had people panic as to why they are in the pivot table report and then the field list isn't popping up. All you need to do is once you're in the report, you can right click. Okay, you can come here to show field list, and then the field list will pop up, right? You can also come to pivot table analyze, okay, and over here field list. When you click on that, it goes off. Okay, when you click on this button, it comes back on. Great. Now let's dive into the various 4 areas of the pivot table report. Okay, now when you're creating a pivot table report, you're basically trying to summarize the data around a value. Okay, you are creating a report around a value. For instance, the first question I asked was, what's the gender distribution in the data set? Basically, I want you to count for male and female, how many males there are and how many females there are. Okay, so the value here is I'm trying to count the number of people by gender, right? So in every report you are creating, there's a certain value you are trying to aggregate by a certain attribute. Is that okay? Another example is if I ask you, what is the total salary paid to each department? What is the total salary paid to each department? You realize that what we are trying to do is we're trying to aggregate salary. We are summing salary up by department. Okay, so if this was a sum if question, and this is how I always like to approach a pivot table question that I struggle with, I ask myself, if this particular question was a sum if question, that what is the total salary paid to each department or paid to a particular department, which column would have been my sum range? Okay, you realize that from that question, your sum range will be what? Will be salary, right? Good. So I know that in that case, the column that I'm aggregating, the column that I'm summing, has to come to the value section. So what you do is you left click on it and then you drag it to values. Right, you see that. So when I drag this to values, what happens here is pivot table will summarize the annual salary column by summing it. Now by default, a pivot table will always sum your number columns. And if you put a text column, so for instance, if I drag gender, which is a text, to the value section, it will count the number of entries in the gender column. Is that okay? So there are 1,000 entries in the gender column, and then for annual salary, it will sum it. That doesn't mean you can't count the annual salary. You can't count it, right? So if you click on this and you come to value field setting, right, I can change this to what? Account. And that also shows me that there are what? 1,000 entries in that as well, right? But let's undo this and come back to what the sum. Good. Now we want to analyze this by something. Okay, so you want to analyze what? Annual salary by department. Okay, good. And that moves you to the next section. So we have rows and we have columns. Now both of them basically do the same thing. You break down the values either on the rows or by column. So if you take a look at rows, you see that there's an icon here that shows you a deep line, and then the line is broken down horizontally. Do you get it? So that shows you that the number is being broken down row by row. So if I drag department left and drag it here, it shows me accounting, engineering, finance, and then it breaks down this figure by this departments. So if I highlight this, it gives me the total over here, which is this. You get it? Then gender is also broken down. You get it? So it's showing you the number of people in each department. You get it? Good. Now I can take this same department and bring it to columns like this. Now when I do this to columns, it's a bit hard to read because I have 2 entries over here. Let me take gender out. So to take something out, you can either drag it like this and just leave it anywhere, undo, or I can uncheck. You see over here, I can uncheck this. Then I have this. Now this is easier to read. So you can see accounting, engineering, finance, HR, IT, and then they have values what across the columns. This is hard to read. It's easier when you have it this way. You get it? So for rows and columns, it's basically how you want your report to look like. You get it? I can place gender in columns like this. So I have female and male. Then I have the various department. It shows me how much female receive and how much male receive for each department. Right? I can also put gender under rows. So I can have more than one element in a particular area. right? So I have gender here, so department and gender in rows, and I can put something else in columns. So let's say country. So I have accounting, so Brazil, China, United States, and I have what the values for each gender. So the question I asked that I want to know what the gender distribution in each ethnicity for each city. Each ethnicity in each city. Right? So that one will look something close to this. So let's see if we can give this a try. We want to see the gender distribution of what each ethnicity in each city. So you realize that this question, what we are trying to do is we are trying to do a count, right? We're trying to do a count. So let's take it bit by bit. First, let's count each gender. So I'm going to bring gender here. That's counting it, 1,000. And I also drag the same thing in rows. I want to break it down by gender, like this. So male and female, we have that. You get it? Now I want to see for each ethnicity. So if I bring ethnicity into rows, you see I have over here, I have female, and I have the various ethnicities. So this 518 is being broken down into this. Right? So I'm breaking down gender into ethnicity. So that's why you have it over here like this. And then male is also broken down into what the ethnicity. If I want it the other way around, I want the ethnicity and there is gender distribution, I will drag ethnicity above gender like this. So I have Asian, they have the breakdown of Asian, male and female. I have black, I have the breakdown of black, male and female. I have Caucasian, the breakdown of male and female, and I have what Latino, the breakdown of male and female. You get it? Now, if I want to see this distribution by what? By city, all I need to do is I can drag city to rows like this. If it's too much, I can put it in columns as well, like this. This probably might be easier on the eye. So you have something like this. So you have Asian, female and male, black, female and male, Caucasian, female and male, Latino, female and male, and then you have what? The various cities and then what the distribution. So you see, all you need to do is to take your time, try and analyze the question. What are you really trying to what? To aggregate. That's the most important thing. So for me, and basically anyone who really understands the use of pivot table, you realize that everything comes down to the fields you place what in the value section. That's the most important aspect. Then what you want to analyze that by can be in rows or can be in what? In columns. Now the next area we're going to look at is filters. Okay. So let's take for instance this particular report we've created, right? We want to just focus on all cities that are from the United States. We want to focus on all cities that are from the United States. That means we want to filter out those that are not in the United States. So those that are in China, those that are in Brazil. So if I come to column labels where city is, I can see all the cities over here. I'll uncheck everything and try to select the American or US cities. So Columbus, I think Miami, Phoenix, I hope I get all right, Seattle, and I'll click OK. Okay, now in this way I'm trying to create a report of gender distribution for the various ethnicities across cities in the United States, and that's why I had to go through the pains of filtering through the data sets to give me the cities for just the United States. But then there's an easy way to get this done. I'm going to clear the filter here. What you do is you put the country field in the filter section, right? Now this allows you to come here and select the country you're interested in, and that filters a report to give you the exact same thing that we did using the column labels over here, right? So the filters allows us to be able to filter a report, okay, with a field that is not currently within this report, right? So we've been able to filter this report with the country, and then it's giving us only the cities in the United States, right? Now another thing you can do with this is you can create the same report for the various countries in different sheets. So what I mean is I'm going to select all here. This report shows for all the cities. Now with country in the filter section, when I come to pivot table analyze, I come to options. Over here you see show report filter pages. When I select that, I have to select country or the field I want to break the report into. So show or report filter pages of this country, and click OK. What's going to happen is that it's going to create a new report in a new sheet for each country. So Brazil, we have Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo. Then China, we have Beijing, Shanghai, and the likes. Then United States, we have what we had before, right? And this is my initial report. Okay, so this report has been broken down into the various items in the country field, right? So this is a very quick way to create the same report, but for different aspects of a particular field, filtered across the items in that field, right? So I'm going to select this to Brazil, right click, and then I'm going to delete those. Good. So that's how we are able to use the filters section to manipulate a report to show just an aspect of the report. Right, currently it's showing all countries, but then you can select any country you want from this. You can also do a multiple selection by ticking this box, and then you can select China and United States, right, or Brazil and China, anyone that you are interested in. Now another thing we can do when you select all, instead of using the filters, I'm dragging this out, is to right click on the field and add as a slicer. It's the same thing. Add as a slicer, but in this instance your slicer is just like the filter, but it's an object you can move it around. So I can bring it here, select Brazil, and this gives me Brazil. Select China, this gives me China, right? Select United States, and this gives me what? Report for United States, right? I can clear the filter, and then everything expands to all or select all, right? I can also do multiple selection by checking this box. So I have Brazil and I want to add China. If I check this, I can add China to it. I can add United States. I can take out China, so Brazil and United States. I can take out United States and have Brazil and China. Right? If I don't want multiple selection, I just have to click on this and then it becomes a single select henceforth. So filters allows us to basically reduce our report to a certain focus, right? So you can actually filter a report, or you can cut out what you're looking for using the filter section. And then one of these filter options are slices. So I'm going to select this. I can now delete this. I don't need it anymore. Now with this in place, and now that we understand the various areas in the pivot table, I'd like to talk about what we call the deferred layout update. So with the deferred layout update, this is how it works. You know, in this current state, whenever you make a change to the fields in the pivot table field area, you expect the pivot table report to update or to respond immediately. So if I drag gender out like this, you expect gender to go out immediately, right? And then you don't have gender anymore, just ethnicity against what? The count. Okay, but with a deferred layout, if this is checked and I drag gender out, there's no response. The pivot table doesn't respond until I come and click update, and then the update goes on. Now this is very useful when you want to be sure that you are okay with the expected changes that are going to happen before you click update. Probably you're giving the report to someone to use, and then you want the report a certain way. You don't want the person to make changes to it. You can check this box. Okay, so no accidental changes to your report that you've created. All right, so now that we understand everything that is in the field area, we will move on, and then we'll go to the two tabs that are available to us from the pivot table. Because we are starting a pivot table, we have two extra tabs: pivot table analyze and design. So pivot table analyze, let me uncheck this and come here to pivot table analyze. Okay, good. So we have the pivot table name. It's always good to give your pivot table a unique name so that it's easy for you to identify it, right? Pivot table 1, pivot table 2 is fine until you have a lot of pivot tables and it's hard for you to know which one is what. Okay, so it's always good to give it a name. Now we have the options. When you come here to options, it's just like general settings where you can set your pivot table, whether I should expand, where there are changes or not, how to represent empty cells. So currently, for instance, you see Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo are empty. There's nothing over there. You can say for empty cells, show, let's say 0. When I click OK, then you have zeros over there. This can be useful in some reports where you want to show zeros where there are no values, right? So those are some of the things you can do in options. There are a lot of things you can go through. Then we've looked at show reports, filter pages, and then get pivot data. So we get pivot data, right? If I reference a cell, so Latinos from Rio de Janeiro, 44, I have 44 over here. Now, if I come into my pivot table, I drag country into filters, okay? I click here, and then I say, I just want Brazil. You realize that what? The 44, which is here, has moved from where it used to be here. And then now the cell is still referencing an empty cell now, right? But get pivot table will ensure that once you reference a cell, you always get that particular cell's value. So I'm bringing this back. I'm going to check the get pivot table option or generate get pivot table option. I'll stand here equal to 44, right? So here in the formula, it actually says the various components that bring about the 44, the ethnicity, which is Latino, the country, which is Rio de Janeiro, right? This also gives me 44. Now, if I filter this, so come here, country is over here, come to this side, and then I'm going to take what? Brazil. See, this still gives me 44 because it's not using a cell reference, it's actually using a formula to generate the value of the pivot table, but this gives me 0. So whenever you need to reference a pivot table which is likely to expand or contract, and you want to reference a particular value, not a cell, then you need to use what we call the get pivot data formula, right? Now, pivot tables can generate that formula for you easily, okay, when you just check that box. But then in the instance where you don't need that particular formula, then you have to uncheck it. So you come here, come to pivot table analyze, and you can uncheck this if you don't need the formula. The next is field settings. Field setting is for changing the formula, right? That is within the value section. Okay, so currently the function for the value section is count because gender is a text. But if you drag a number value over there, it's going to be what? Sum. By default, it always starts with a sum. Now, if you want to change it to average, max, or min, this is how you do it, by coming to the field settings to change it. Okay, when you come to number format too, you can format a number. So let's take a look at this. So over here, right, I have the various cities over here across this. I'm going to drag city under ethnicity, and I'll drag annual salary here. Like this. This is a count of annual salary. When I come to PivotTable analyze, field settings, I can change this to average. Okay, this giving the average, but then the number format is hard to read. Okay, so we need 1,000 separator, we need 2 decimal place. So I come to PivotTable analyze, field setting, number format, then I'll come to number. So we have 2 decimal place, 1,000 separator, then I click what? Okay. I click OK again. Then you have something like this. Very readable, very easy to understand and use. Right. So that is how you can get to the value field section. Another way you can get to the value field section is simply double clicking on this, the title of your field, that's your value field, and then it comes or it brings you here. That's a second way. You can also right click on the value, and then you come here to value field setting, same thing. Or last but not least, when you select the field or you click on the drop down for that particular field, we have value field settings. So there are several ways available in the pivot table for you to get to this particular point. Now we're going to move on to a subsequent one, okay, which is to drill up and drill down. Is an option in pivot tables. You can drill up and drill down. Currently, we don't have option. We don't have fields that allow us to drill up and drill down. Then grouping is something you can do in a pivot table. So you can group certain items together and give them a name. But normally, what you find pivot tables grouping for you a lot are dates. So in dates, pivot tables create what we call hierarchy. We'll look at that extensively, but it basically groups dates in years, quarters, months, and the likes. So grouping allows you to put those values together in those categories, and you can ungroup it if you don't like those kind of grouping. Then insert a slicer. Okay, so what we did by right-clicking the fields over here, you can do same by coming to insert the slicer and you select what you want. So I can select country. Yeah, I'm doing multiple, so country. And then let's say I select gender. So these two, click OK, and then we have these two slicers. Okay, so I can select female. For this report, I select male. I can select China. I can select both genders. Okay, I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to delete these two. So that's slicer. And then the next one is timeline. Timeline is a slicer, but for only date fields. Only fields that contain dates. If the field doesn't contain a date, timelines are not available. Alright, so when you click here, hide date, you have something like this. So you're able to slice your data or filter your data based on what date fields. So I can select August, I can select July, I can expand this to October, I can reduce this to August, right? Yes, and then you can change what you are trying to filter, the hierarchy you're trying to filter. So you have years, you have quarters, you have months, and you have days. Right, good. So I'll take this off, come back here. Then we have refresh. Now refresh is it's a very important aspect of your pivot table use, right? Because from time to time you expect the data in your table to change, or new data to come in, new data to go out. So it's important for you to be able to refresh the data or the pivot table for the changes to take effect. So this is our table over here, right? If I come through, I'm going to just delete some of this data. So I'm deleting from this point downwards, like this. It's gone. You see that? When you come here, the numbers have not changed. It's okay. So the pivot table still remains the same. So what you need to do is come to pivot table analyze, come to refresh, and then you refresh your data set. When you refresh, this refresh affects just this current pivot table you're standing within. But refresh all will refresh all the pivot tables in your workbook, right? So what you need to do is, depending on what you're using, if you're using just one pivot table, you just want to refresh that, you just click refresh. You want to refresh everything in your data set on your workbook, including queries, you click refresh all. So I'm going to click refresh, and you see it has responded, giving me what, just 5 people in my data set now. Come here, we have what, just 5 people, right? If I undo this, bring this back, right, I have my data set back. Okay, so whenever you refresh, any changes you've made will take effect. Good. Then we have change data source. Change data source. Now, sometimes you've created a pivot table that is connected to a particular data source, right? Especially for those who use ranges in creating their pivot tables. That is not a table, it doesn't have a unique name. From time to time, when new data comes in, they probably have to come here to change data source and then expand the data range to capture the new data. But if you're using a table, once it's a table, it will continue to expand and include the new data. So you don't need to worry about it increasing on new data sets. Okay. But then sometimes you're probably moving a pivot table from one table connection to another table connection. So you come here and you can change the pivot table name, or the table is connected to another pivot table. Right. So that's that. And then we look at clear. So when you need to clear, for instance, over here, we have several fields. I don't want to go through one by one by dragging them out or checking the boxes. So let's select clear all, and then everything is gone. Right? Undo this, and then select. If you want to select the entire pivot table, sometimes you are copying a pivot table to duplicate it, which is actually the best way to use pivot tables. Whenever you are creating pivot tables from one data set, you don't need to create it multiple times. All you need to do is just create one, and when you're done, you select everything like this, copy, and then you paste. Right? This way, this pivot table is different from this pivot table. I can come here and then I can clear. So I say clear all, and there's a fresh pivot table that I can use whilst this one remains intact. You see that? So select and clear are very useful tools. You can also move the pivot table. Probably you created it in an existing sheet, you want to move it to a new sheet. You created a new sheet, you want to move it to an existing sheet. All those things are possible using the move table option. Now calculations. When you create a pivot table, so let me select this pivot table. You have the field items and sets. We're going to look at them, how we can create calculations in pivot tables. Okay, people actually create new columns in the data set and then refresh it to show the columns they need for their calculations. But then you can also do some calculations in the pivot table. So all those things will be looked at in the next or subsequent video. The next option is field list. I've already mentioned it. That's fine. Then we have buttons. Now, when you have multiple fields in the row section, okay, the topmost field, in this case ethnicity, will have a button that allows you to collapse or expand the item in that field. So we can collapse this to the various ethnicities, and then I click on the button to expand them. Do you see? So these buttons allow you to do that. If you don't want anyone to be able to collapse or expand this, you can take them off so people cannot collapse and expand it. When you click it, it allows you to collapse and expand the values. Right? Good. Now if you have a whole list of them that you need to collapse and expand, you can right click. So to be able to access my drop down, this is some technical challenge. I'll put some empty rows over here. Right, and I can now right click this easily. Yes. And then we come to expand and collapse. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand the entire field. So all of them expand at a go. Right? If I want to collapse everything at a go, right click. And I'll select collapse entire field. So that's how those two actually work together. And then we have field headers. So where you have row labels, you can take those off. And then it just takes it off. Sometimes it can be useful when you don't want to show that. Alright, the next tab is the design tab, which is quite straightforward. So first is subtotals. So let's look at what subtotals are. So I'm going to expand everything here. So expand the entire field like this. Now when you come here to design, okay, the subtotals are what you see totaling these breakdowns. So up here you have the subtotal. You bring it to the bottom of the group, you have it showing like this, Asian total, like that. This is all aesthetics, how you want your data to look. If you don't want subtotals, you have it like this, no subtotals. Right? Good. Then we have grand totals. So grand totals are the total you see down here. Okay, depending on the breakdown you have here, you can have a grand total on the right too. Right? Now, if you don't want a grand total, come here to the grand total section and say off for rows and columns, and then the grand total is gone off. Okay. Then we have report layout. So by default, the report layout you'll be using is the compact form, which is what we have over here. Then outline form looks like this. So you have Asian here, then you have city here, right? Then the last form, which is what I'd like to use, is the tabular form. So you have something like this, you have Asian, then you have city. The difference between tabular and outline is with outline, which was this, you realize the city starts on the next line, right? But then with tabular, it starts on the same line as what Asian. Okay, if you want to even make it more tabular or you want it to look like a table, come to report, you can say repeat all items. Then you have Asian repeating throughout, you have black repeating throughout, you have Caucasian repeating throughout. Right? So again, design how you want your report to look. Okay, then we come to inserting blank lines after each item just to improve how it looks. So like this, they have a blank. After black, you have a blank as well, and then after Caucasian, you have a blank. So if you don't want that, you come here, you remove the blank lines, and then you have something like this. Right? Then we have row headers, if you want row headers. Right? If you want to bold in the row headers. Okay, if you want to bold in the column headers. Okay, if you want banded rows. So these are banded rows. And if you want banded columns, these are banded columns. You have lines in there in between. Good. So I'm going to take this off. Then we have design. There are a host of designs you can actually choose from. Right? I will take this. It looks neat, it looks clean. You don't necessarily have to stick with the default pivot table format. You can choose any pivot table design that just looks good and fits with what you are trying to do. So now that we've gone through the various commands available for a pivot table, we can now get to some action and try hands on a few questions. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to select what? Clear all. Just set this question right again. Okay. Now let's say we want to do a little analysis where we want to see, okay, what was the top 10 what was the top 10 paid job titles? What was the top 10 paid job titles, right? So this question is an analysis of the annual salary against job title. So we'll bring annual salary here, right? And then job title in rows like this. And these are all the job titles in the annual salaries. Now we want to see the top 10. When we sort from largest to smallest, we see the highest paid all the way to the bottom. But what we want to actually do is we want to see just the top 10, right? So we can come here to the job titles, any of them, right click and select filter, and then we're going to select what? Top 10, right? Now this allows you to select what? The top 10 or bottom 10. And you can also change the number to whatever number you want, top 3, top 10, top 5, or top 20. Items percent sum of a particular value field. So in this case, we have just one over there. So we click OK, and then it reduces this report to just what? The top 10. Okay. Now the thing about this top 10 is that when new data comes in and you refresh, it will update. Okay, so we have these fields. You see quality engineer is the bottom, right? I'm going to add something else. Is there controls? We have controls engineer over here. Let me see if it falls in the top 10. No? Good. So I'm going to increase the amount for this particular person. Let's make it 900. 90981 right? Okay, so we come here, go to analyze, come to refresh data, and then you see what? Control engineer now pops up and quality is gone out. Okay, very simple. I will do this. I'll do the change over here, and then we have this back. Good. Once we also have annual salary, we can also look at what? The number of people who have these roles, and then what's the average salary. So I want to count. So we count, I can put any field over there and then basically count. So if I take gender over here, it will give me a count. If I take that out, so I'm going to use sale or staff ID. So I'm counting, it still gives it the same value, right? So these are the number of people in the various roles. Very interesting to have what? 105 vice presidents, but it's just raw data. Okay, now we're also going to want to look at the average salary being paid. So I'll drag annual salary there again. It gives me annual. I can double click on this, select average, and it gives me what? Average salary. I'll change this name from average out to just average annual salary. Enter. So I have average annual salary, I have the count of staff ID. I can select this and type number of staff. I can type here total salary. It's okay, so it's easy for you to be able to modify the names to fit what you're trying to do. Now I realize that annual salary is not well formatted, so all you need to do is double click on this, come to number formats, and then you go where? So you can go to number, to decimal place, 1000 separated, click OK, and OK over here. And then neatly you can see why vice presidents are at highest pay, because we have a lot of people who are vice president, and average annual salary is 222,000. So that is how you can use pivot tables to create a very quick, simple report. Okay, if I want to see this report for the various countries, I can bring country as a slicer. So right click this, add as a slicer, and I bring country here. So we have Brazil, we have China, we have United States, like this, right? And I can select the report of changes. Nice. So that's one thing you can use a pivot table for. create very simple dynamic reports. Let me take this off. I'm going to select all this and just do a Ctrl G to copy down, and then that's gone. All right, now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to clear this, and I'll see how we can also analyze with dates. So clear all. Good. Now, like I said, when you put a date field right in the row section, it's going to group it. So I'm going to take higher dates, for instance, put it in rows, and you see that it groups the higher dates. Let me take this away. Okay, so higher date has been grouped, right? And then I'm going to put annual salary. Where can I find annual salary? Okay, good. Annual salary over here, right? Now, when you expand this, you have quarters. Okay, so for 1992, you have quarters. Expand each quarter. You have January, February. You expand the month, days, like that. Is that okay? So it helps you be able to easily analyze in hierarchies, as we call it, in date fields, right? You have the date grouped into hierarchy. You have the date grouped into a hierarchy. So we have year, quarter, month, then what? Date. And then this helps you break down the value. Now, aside that, if you actually double click on any of the values in a pivot table, what I mean is if I double click on this value, for instance, right, PivotTables is going to give me a breakdown of what that value entails for annual salary. So you select this, you see the value 369,676, right? It's the same value you have over here, 369,676. So it actually breaks down the data. So it actually breaks down the data and tell you which transactions relate to that particular amount, right? So pivot tables are actually a very good tool for you to be able to summarize data and drill down. So that's a drill down effect of a pivot table. So any figure you take, you can actually easily drill down. When you take a particular year, let's say 1994, you see this amount and you're wondering, how come this amount is so large after 1993? So I can double click on this and then I get a breakdown and I see that, oh, okay, the reason why this amount is large is because of these 3 or these 4 lines, right? So then I can investigate and find out what is causing this. I'm deleting this. I hear that. So fantastic tools which you have in pivot table. Okay, right. So I'm going to expand this, and then I'll come here to design, and then I'm going to say do not repeat all items, right? Good. So it looks much more pleasing to the eye. Let's expand this. So expand, and I'll say expand entire field. So you have something like this. All right, good. So guys, this is where we draw the curtains on our very first video for pivot tables. I hope you're able to learn a lot and able to understand how pivot tables work. In our subsequent videos, we look at more examples and we look at how we can apply pivot table in much more advanced scenarios. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you in our next video. Bye.
If this video was helpful and you would like to receive more of these videos directly on your WhatsApp, you can send ad to this WhatsApp number. We'll add you to our broadcast list so you receive our videos directly. You can also visit our YouTube channel, Finance Skills Hub. All our old videos are here. Please subscribe for notification of new videos or connect with us on any of these social media handles. Thank you so much for watching.